It's day 7. What I've got working now is player's keyboard and mouse controls, plus there is a new change player input device option in here, and I guess I still need to add the mouse controls for that, but I mean gamepad works. It currently does default to gamepads. I mean in the future maybe there'll be like an option to just save it. I need to work on that display cursor still, widen that a little bit, even move the text over a little bit maybe. If I change to gamepad 2, where player 2 is using, it'll automatically switch player 2 to gamepad 1, and you know, if I try to switch, it'll just switch the two. If I go up here to keyboard and mouse, that works. I can switch the player 2 to keyboard and mouse, and yeah, they'll just put the other one, the gamepad 1. I can have a third player in there. I don't know why. Oh, right, because it defaults to gamepads. Yeah, I'll probably have like save the settings or something in the future. If I go in here now and select new game, that's with the gamepad, but I can in fact move with, and you can see the cursor of my mouse. My tank turret is following the mouse. I've got keyboard and mouse controls for the tank, which is pretty nice. Those boxes on the screen, I just realized I still have them up. Those are for the mouse controls on the upgrade selection, which I didn't have last time. Now when the boxes are kind of just like telling me where the line is where the mouse will flip over to the next spot. Let's go over what I did to implement this a bit. Oh, a problem I do have still is changing the player input during the game. Because when I pause the game, I can go into the settings menu and change the controls, but it won't update, and I'm not sure how to get that to work because each player is just an object player. I have to figure out a way to update a specific instance's input. I just figured out after recording that if I simply make the player object, check what ID it is, and then update its input based on the game object player input settings, then it'll update just fine. I mean, I don't know if that's the optimal way to do it because it's checking the variable of another object every frame, but if I go in, I can definitely show you. My mouse is up here, my turret, I'm using the gamepad, as you can see, and then if I switch to keyboard and mouse, my turret already just points towards my mouse now. So yeah, it works if I just have the player object look at what the game object says player 1 inputs should be. It works. Maybe I was just overthinking it. Maybe this is just fine. I do have this array of gamepads up to 12. -1 is none. And then the gamepad length, which is just how many gamepads will be. I check each slot, and if it's valid, like there's a gamepad connected, then it saves into that gamepad list, which is actually an array, and set the dead zone of the gamepad because that's just something that needs to happen. I've got 2 more cursors for the 2 more menus. So the input select is simply a very basic menu. If you confirm, you go to the next level. Cancel, go back to settings. There we go, input select 2. It does that gamepad update again because you're in the input selection menu, and then you can move on the next menu, which is then here where it checks. When you hit confirm, it'll check. All right, so cursor 1 input from the previous menu, you're on player 1's input. So if your cursor 2 is -1, which is the keyboard and mouse option, because the cursor slot 0 is just gamepad 0, which is the first gamepad. And then so the -1 is the keyboard and mouse. And then for my cursor, if it goes below -1, it goes to the gamepad length, which is 1. Oh yeah. Let me go into that menu, see if it's dynamic like I think it is. Player input. If I unplug, oh, look at that. I can't select them. Gamepad 1. Oh, right, that one's not. Cool. This is actually slot 2 of the gamepads. And if I hit that, wow. So yeah, this is slot, wait, this is now gamepad 0. Like I was saying, input 2, -1 means it's the keyboard and mouse, so that's its own special code. The array 0 is then your controller. It'll just be that controller in that gamepad array. I had these 3 checks here. So while player 2's input is not -1, meaning not none. So if it's -1 in the array, then it's none. If it's -1 on the menu, then it's keyboard and mouse. Maybe it's a little confusing, but it makes sense to me. First check to make sure player 2's input is not none. And then if player 2 is equal to player 1, or player 2 is equal to player 3, basically if player 2 matches anyone else, starting with player 1, then go to the next gamepad. And yeah, it'll just be gamepad that it'll bump a player to go to. Right now it won't reassign someone to a keyboard and mouse, but it'll bump them to another gamepad if it's available. This while loop is here because if player 1 takes over player 2's spot, then yeah, obviously it has to change, but then player 2 also checks with player 3, make sure it's not trying to take a gamepad from somebody else that already has that gamepad. As long as player 2 is matching somebody else, it's going to go to the next gamepad slot, and the gamepad array, it does have a bunch of -1s at the end, so once it reaches the end of the real list of gamepads, it'll just become none. That'll just be an easy way to knock somebody out if there's not enough controllers and you want to reassign a player to a specific controller. So I just basically do the same thing with each player. The draw effect, I've got the 4 players to choose from, and above that case I have the second one, which is the gamepad list, which it just does a for loop to draw all the gamepad numbers. That case has no break before input select 1, so that's how the player selection stays open while the controller list is there, just so I can have both on screen at once. I don't know if I want to keep it that way, but I thought it would be helpful to see the change when I change the player's input. You can see the other players change around. I think that's helpful to the user as well. If you have any advice or have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.